Hey guys, Ollie the Vangaboys here. It has been a while. Definitely apologize for the lack of content over the last like 6 to 8 months, but life's been kind of crazy. But besides that, we're back and I'm going to try to bring you back regular content, whether it's deck profiles or fight videos, which I'm really excited about. Some cool stuff that I've been able to set up. But today I'm bringing you a deck profile, Angels, even though they're not Angel Feathers. It's my first standard deck profile in quite a bit of time, but I've been really loving Alestiel. Of course, we don't have an Angel Feather in the standard format yet or ever. We'll kind of have to wait and see. You know, I think at this point we're more likely to see like a Gavrail encounter deck than anything else. So I'm not going to hold my breath, but I will say ever since Alestiel got her new support, she feels like a deck that fits me like a glove. So let's get into my deck build, because it's not a typical one. Of course, with the ride line, now normally you would think you would just run the Elestial ride line and that would be it, but I actually pick like the grade 1, of course, because you want to be able to start like your binding. The Black Wings and White Wings abilities are both pretty good. The black one being a defensive, the white one basically letting you ride for free. So whatever you buy from the top deck, you'll get it, but I think both effects are pretty good. That way you don't have to worry about the randomness. What I did cut is the grade 2. The grade 2 I'm actually running the Kyrie one, because on attack you just take a unit from the field and baz it up to your hand. So this actually lets you play a really aggressive grade 2 game, and I'll actually even get into it because if you hit Black Wings and you have certain cards in your hand, you can actually get a lot of value off your attacks and pretty much bounce 2 cards back up to your hand, meaning you still have hands to guard, things like that. Don't have to worry about losing pieces for tired decks like Candiva and all other stuff. But then if you're in White Wings, there's some units that I have that you can do some cool combos with to make like power early. So both grade 2, whether it's Black Wing or White Wings, are both pretty effective. And then of course you'll be playing the new Alestiel, the Holy Angel of Blessings Alestiel. And what's cool about her, she does a whole lot for the deck. It fixes every weakness Alestiel has, so it gives you multi-attack via the Vanguard. You won't be restanding any Vanguards or anything like that. Her Black Wings ability is like a consistency ability. If you're in Black Wings, you can discard a card from your hand, call any of the Black Wings ability from your deck. So usually you'll call Feniel, who's the grade 2 that lets you swap a card from your bind zone with one in your hand. And then if you're on the White Wings, at the end of the battle, you'll counterblast, discard a card, search your deck for or your hand for the Archangel Twin Wings Alestiel, which is the original one, and you'll write it as stand and get drive -1, and then you shuffle your deck. So it gives you multiple Vanguard attacks, lots of heavy pressure, and it really does change everything. Even with like the new support you got, I'm only running one of the new cards, one of the new rear guards. So, but I'll get into it. And I'm not gonna go through this by like grades. I'm actually gonna go this by like support packages. But I will start off with my ratios, and I'll justify them in just a minute here. So, in my personal opinion, the original Elestial, she's perfectly fine at 3. I think like you'll see her enough. You'll have the new grade 1 lets you bot deck any Elestial, so you can generally speaking like get them to the bottom of your deck. There's a card that can rip cards from Soul, so if you need to attack with that to get out of your Soul to go and get your rewrite, you can still do that. And then this is what's going to seem atypical here, but deck slots in Standard are always really tight. And so with this one, I only played 2 of the Persona Ride Holy Angel Alestiel, since you start off with her in the ride line. The reason for this, and the reason why I'm going to do by the packages, whether it's White Wings and Black Wings, instead of doing it by like grades, there's a combo that you're consistently able to pull off where every turn you're able to basically just rip your Alestiel from your Soul and add it to your hand, or whatever missing card you might be needing for your next turn on the field. That allows you to get your Persona Ride every single turn. I very rarely do not Persona Ride in this deck. You'd be losing at that point. But we'll go ahead and start off with the Black Wing package, where it's pretty simple. Of course, like your best card in the deck is Feniel. Feniel has 2 skills, and to my opinion, the second one is not worth the counterblast always. It's super good, but you want to make sure that you're going to get the full value of like your magic numbers when you do it. But the first skill is 1 place in rearguard circle, as long as you have Alestiel as your Vanguard. Soul Blast, choose a card from your bind zone, add it to your hand, then bind a card. So generally speaking, the card you're wanting to bind is your second most important card in the deck, and that's Elkel, and that's why these are both at 4, because you need to be able to have Elkel in your hand and a Feniel on the field, so that way you do that skill, because Elkel will put you both in Black Wings and White Wings. Elkel's skill of when you ride Alestiel and then you bind her to activate both effects to draw a card can be pretty useful, but you might end up getting stuck with more than 1 card in the bind zone, so it's not something I typically like to do unless I'm in a position where I know that like by going into Black Wings that -5k is going to make a huge difference. But yeah, so Feniel is pretty good, and Feniel's secondary skill is to counterblast, and when you attack your opponent's Vanguard, they're in grade 3, you can minus them 5k. So I generally speaking like to hold keep my damage as low as possible, and then keep my like CB open so that way I can keep doing Alestial's reride, so that way they can't damage deny me. But there's those instances where, like, let's say I have Persona Road and I have a good booster, and I want to make sure that I'm like either killing them this turn or like leaving them with no cards in hand. That's when I'll activate her ability. I don't always do it, but it's pretty. It's there if you need it, which is pretty cool. And last of the Blackwing support is gonna be MIL, and to me, MIL is like the GOAT. So MIL says Blackwings at the end of the battle. This unit attacked while boosted. Choose a card from your soul or rear guards, and you return it in your hand. If you chose from your soul, you just put this unit back into your soul. And I think 2 is fine, because generally speaking, you're gonna hopefully hard draw into Feniel, and then you can discard a card with Alestial's skill and then call this out. And why I like her a lot is because since you're rewriting the Superior Ride with the Twin Angel Elestial over like the Holy Blessings Elestial, you can use her skill at the end of her battle to go ahead and grab the your Ride Line Elestial and add it to your hand, literally guaranteeing you a Persona Ride. I'm basically playing like 4 Persona Rides, if you will, with this card. But let's say, you know, you drove check into your the Holy Angel Elestial. You can either bounce her yourself, so that way you can have her on the next turn to ensure your Persona Rides, or you can bounce Feniel thinking, oh man, I'm not sure if I'm going to get into Feniel on my next turn. So she lets you bounce like whatever you need, and if you take something from the soul, you just put her back in the soul, so you don't have to worry about losing soul. But she is fantastic. So to me, that's all I really feel like I need from the Blackwings. I think Blackwings are very much like a toolbox and consistency support, which is like really, really good. That's what Alestial really needed to be able to keep her like ride going every single turn, because obviously, and I'm sure Avengers players know this, if you don't have your superior ride, it doesn't really feel good. Like 3 attacks with okay numbers doesn't feel good. The Persona ride with a superior ride, Alestial picking up the crit, the minusing the 5k, those are all super important. Now, the reason why I play a low Blackwing package is I actually love Whitewing Angels quite a bit. So these 2 units here serve a very similar purpose for me. Malibu, she's a grade 1. White Wings are active. She picks up 10k during your turn. So she's a 15k booster, and if you need to, 15k beater. I mean, during Persona Ride, if you're in a bad position, that's 25 right there. But generally speaking, I'll usually call her behind MIL, and that makes a pretty good column. It'll be like 25 column, not during Persona Ride, 35k column during Persona Ride, and then of course if you minus your opponent like 5k, they're at 8k. 35 to their 8 feels really good. It's definitely like a 2-card guard right there for them. And then Torkel is one of my other favorites. She's a grade 3. Now her skill says it's not mandatory. So like on attack, you can choose to give herself 10,000 power. So she'll go from 13 to 23 or 33 during your Persona Ride turns. And then at the end of the battle, you may choose her to put in the soul if you do the effect. You don't actually have to put her in the soul. I don't think I've ever put her in the soul unless I'm going up against a deck that can like bind my front row cards. Then I could put her in a soul to kind of avoid that bind, so that way my bind zone doesn't get too super messy. But there's a really cool fun thing that I like to do on my ride up if I end up seeing Torkoal in my hand early. So in a way, like these 5 units kind of serve like the same purpose to me. They might as well be like the same unit but playing 5 copies, because they're both Whitewing Angels that gain power while I'm in Whitewings. And the reason why I say that is because one of my favorite card in the deck is Herjuel. Herjuel says, when you're in Whitewings, when you place Counterblast 1, choose a card with Whitewings ability not named Herjuel from your drop and call it to open rearguard circle. So it has to be an open rearguard circle, but you can, let's say opponent dealt you damage and you're on grade 2 and you have a Counterblast open. Counterblast, call this, and you're in Whitewings, Counterblast. Call Herjuel. All of a sudden you have a 31k column while your opponent's on like grade 2 or grade 1. It's pretty huge. And then you can use your grade 2 on the Vanguard circle, the Kyrie grade 2, and just bounce Herjuel, so that way you can get value out of using her again, since you only are at 3. And then the other synergy that Herjuel has, and this is the other Festival Collection support, is going to be Seraphiel. So her skill is pretty simple. When placed on rearguard circle, doesn't matter from where, whether it's drop or hand, that's why it's important. Choose a grade 3 with Elestial and its card name from your drop, bottom deck it. And then Whitewing's back row, when your unit with Elestial and its card name is placed on Vanguard circle during your battle phase, you can just, restand this unit. Which is actually pretty interesting because it doesn't say back row center. So let's say they ever give you like the ability to like restand a rear guard. Lay down the road, they release a promo of like a Blackwings unit that says if your Vanguard's Celestial and is placed during the battle phase, like restand this unit. Then technically this grade 1 could restand, but nothing like that exists quite yet. But still cool to think about. But Seraphiel lets you keep recycling your Celestial, so you can keep making sure you have your reride, because like sometimes you end up drawing them early, and I actually use them to discard to ride if I need to, or discard for PG, and then I just use Sir Raphael to bottom deck it. That way I get the full value out of it. And what's cool about that too is Hergewell can, like, you know, counterblast, and because it's a white wing unit, you can use her to keep recycling these from your drop, especially if you end up sometimes being unlucky and you only end up seeing one. Sometimes I'll intentionally call over this unit just to like call this to another rearguard circle so I can at least recycle the seals. And so yeah, that's it for my white wing package. Like I said, there's some really, really cool combos with it, and this is pretty much going to go into like the rest of the staples of the deck, right? So Perfect Guard's pretty self-explanatory, right? Elementaria is still always relevant, especially with like guard restrictions, grade 4s. It's just such a good card. And then of course just 3 angel themed sentinels, because I wanted to keep my deck angel themed even if it's like max rarity ish, because SP's not LSRs. And then for the over trigger, and my trigger lineup's actually going to be very, very different than you would typically see, and I think in a lot of decks. But the blue over trigger I think is the best one of the two in the festival collection, at least for a lot of decks that I like to play, especially very toolbox oriented decks. Angel Feather and Premium, for example, I'm using this now instead of the Heater over trigger, and any Heater deck that I still play, I use this one as well. This over trigger is amazing. So basically what it does is it shoots a card from your drop, put it in your hand, and then you can give one of your units and give it a critical. Now to go with my trigger lineup on why it's going to be a little bit differently. So obviously standard decks tend to be pretty like piece reliant, so I actually like to play a heavy draw package. So I play 4 of the effect draws and 2 of the front triggers, because I'm usually attacking with Alestiel. Usually my attack pattern, especially if I have the grade 1 that restants the Alestiel, is I'll do Alestiel, you know, Holy Blessings Alestiel, and then skill to rewrite into the Twin Angel Alestiel, and then I'll attack with that one. It's 3 drive checks. So, you know, you hit a front trigger. I can even see like the argument being made to do like a 3-and-3 split, but I just feel like needing to see Fenyo, the defensives for, you know, drawing from this is super, super nice, especially if you like end up drawing into a trigger. It makes guarding in a format where guarding is like nearly impossible, which is one of my issues with standard. And then of course, because these pick up 5k, it makes doing those like 1-card guards a lot simpler, so that way you're not having to discard so much from your hand to guard. And then of course the front triggers pick up an extra 5k, so a 20k shield. Super, super nice. And then this is where it gets a little bit interesting with my critical triggers. I'm only running 5. I think 5 is the happy ratio. I've tried 4 because I was actually trying to do 3 fronts and 4 draws, and I think it was even before the new over trigger came out, so I could argue that I could like go into less, but I still think 5 is a very, very good ratio. I think most decks in standard these days don't even need like 8 crits. I think that's kind of like an overabundance, and it even prevents you from being able to guard so efficiently. And so with 5 crits, it basically makes it so you don't have to draw all of your crits early, because I've had that happen before. You might still have a few in your deck, so that way those like re-rides end up feeling good with your drive checks, especially when you're thinning out the deck every turn, because you're presumably able to thin your deck out 2 cards a turn, because even when you use Sir Raphael's skill to bottom deck Elestial, she's not technically taking up deck space on those first 2 drive checks. She is on the bottom of the deck, and if you didn't do any skill to shuffle, like, you've thinned it out pretty good, and then you're thinning out again for the rewrite of Elestial, which is really, really cool. So 5 crits, I think, pretty dang handy, and of course, like, Edwidge with a soul crit, just in case you need it, but I'll be honest with you, I've never actually needed it. I could probably get, like, all signature Bang Dream crits just to have, like, a really, really cool, like, trigger zone, and it wouldn't feel any effects, because since you're doing so much rewriting, soul is, like, never an issue, even with the soul blessing that I do. And then I'm just playing to be on theme for Hollow Heal Angels. I feel weird about effect heals at this current format, just because, like, you know, when the best deck of the format was Chronojet, it made sense to play like the heal trigger at like 2 that like gained shield power if your opponents want higher Vanguard, but it didn't even gain that much more shield. It was basically just like, what, a 20k shield. The one that ends up picking up 15k, like if your opponent has a crit, is also really good. It's really effective against decks like Gandiva and Ava to an extent. The biggest issue is Gandiva being one of the best decks in format. I'll be honest with you, if you're not perfect guarding the Vanguard, you're in a bad situation, because Gandiva is going to be bigger than what like 1 or 2 triggers can guard, even with that effect. And then you have to reliably try to like have more than copy of those. And then if your opponent doesn't have a does not end up having the like a critical from effect on their Vanguard, then it's just a 10k shield and you feel really, really bad. So right now I feel pretty confident to say 15k vanilla heal triggers are probably the best way to play. That is my Alestial build. Tell me what you guys think. I actually have quite a bit of local tops with it. I don't get to play super often since I'm like the TO for the card shop I work at. So sometimes I'll get to play like sneak peeks, which at the last sneak peek I got 2nd place. I actually healed out of Alestial's ability going up against Gandeva in the last round, so I didn't get to do my re-ride and I didn't get to nab my Persona ride from Soul, so that game felt very, very bad. Just recently, like yesterday, I got 3rd place, lost in the first round, but then I ended up winning the rest to be able to, and my tiebreakers were good enough that I got 3rd. And I think prior to that, there was an event that I did. It actually might have been, it was actually when Alestiel first came out. When Alestiel first came out with the new festival collection stuff, I went to the other local card shop in town and I ended up getting 1st place. And that was even when a lot of people were playing Ballista. So I feel like Alestiel is a really, really good deck. And the cool thing about the new Alestiel is her bind zone issue kind of gets fixed a little bit. The original Alestiel says if you take a card from your bind zone, bind a card. But the new Alestiel just says take a card from your bind zone, add it to your hand, and then bind a card. So if you can't grab a card from the bind zone, because let's say Shoujo Doji like puts it to the drop, for whatever reason, you're still able to bind the top card of your deck, at least being able to keep you going in there. Multiple cards in the bind zone is kind of an issue. Now, the nice thing is if like Messiah binds like Feniel, then you can just grab Feniel and just fix it with that. But if you don't have Feniel and Elkel, it's kind of an issue. So there is that new promo, and I keep thinking about that promo. It's on place, Soul Blast 1, drop all the cards from your bind zone to the drop, bind the top card of your deck if it's a trigger draw card, which that drawing a card is really, really cool. But the problem is it's not an Angel unit, it's not a White Wing or Black Wings unit, so you can't like search it out via Black Wings. So I'd have to like cut some of my White Wings right, and like what kind of ratio should I put it at, 2 or 3? It doesn't gain any power. So for right now, I don't feel like there's any room for it at the moment, nor there's a reason to run it. My hand always feels pretty good, and yeah, so again, guys, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you guys enjoy the content that's coming again, and we're going to be having some fight videos with my teammates. I actually went and made a really, really nice overlay, and we're going to try to do some more stuff pretty regularly, and hopefully start doing at least a video every 2 weeks, if not every single week. So peace out. See you guys hopefully at BCS this season.